This show is part of One Place, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the Roundup. Today, we're looking at the absolute chaos for Americans trying to flee the Middle East as regional tensions boil over. We'll also break down the first results of the 22-6 midterms in Texas and North Carolina, and look at why the Trump administration is rolling back a Biden-era childcare rule. In Minnesota, lawmakers are debating a resolution to stop military strikes on Iran, while Roy Cooper and Michael Whatley prepare for a massive Senate showdown in North Carolina. We'll cover Kristi Noem's defense of immigration enforcement, the surprising GOP runoff in Texas, and Congressman Gregory Meek's warnings about a lack of a plan for the war with Iran. Plus, we'll look at the generational divide in North Carolina's 4th District and Pete Buttigieg's vision for a post-Trump America.
We start today with a developing crisis for U.S. citizens currently in the Middle East.
That's right. The situation is being described as mayhem by travelers. The U.S. State Department has issued an urgent advisory for citizens in 14 different countries, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Israel, and Qatar, to depart now. But as many are discovering, that is much easier said than done. Commercial flights are being canceled or turning back midair. One traveler from Texas mentioned his mother was on a flight from Doha to Dallas that had to turn back because of airspace closures. It's creating a terrifying bottleneck.
And the costs are skyrocketing. We're hearing stories of people paying $1,000 just for a driver to take them across the border from Dubai into Oman because they couldn't get a flight out. Even for those who can find tickets, the prices are jumping by hundreds of dollars every time a payment fails or a page refreshes. The State Department says they are in contact with about 3,000 travelers and are working on chartering military and private planes. But for many on the ground, the official support lines have been unable to provide clear instructions. It's a race against time, as security warnings put embassies on lockdown, and the conflict between Israel, the U.S., and Iran continues to escalate.
Now let's shift to the domestic front, where the 2026 midterm cycle has officially begun.
Texas and North Carolina held their primaries on Tuesday, and the results are sending shockwaves through both parties. In Texas, the big story is on the Republican side, where incumbent Senator John Cornyn failed to secure an outright majority. He's now headed for a 12-week runoff against State Attorney General Ken Paxton. This is a massive test for the traditional GOP establishment against the MAGA wing of the party. Paxton has been a vocal Trump ally, and if Trump decides to put his finger on the scale, it could end Cornyn's long career in the Senate.
On the Democratic side in Texas, James Tallarico won big, defeating Jasmine Crockett. Tallarico is a seminarian who uses a faith-based populist message, and he's hoping that approach can finally do what no Democrat has done since 1994, win a statewide office in Texas. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, the Senate matchup is set between former Governor Roy Cooper and Michael Whatley. Cooper is a huge get for Democrats. He's a popular figure who has won statewide 3 times in a state Trump carried. He's running as an independent voice, while Whatley is the former RNC chairman with full Trump backing. This race will likely determine who controls the Senate come 2027.
Next up, we look at a major policy shift coming from the White House regarding child care.
The Trump administration is moving to repeal a Biden-era rule that was designed to stabilize the child care industry. Under the Biden rule, states were required to pay child care subsidies based on enrollment rather than daily attendance. For providers in low-income areas, this was a lifeline. If a child gets sick or the weather is bad, the provider still has to pay teachers and keep the lights on. Without this rule, if attendance drops below 70%, providers lose that income. It makes it nearly impossible to run a stable business.
The Trump administration, however, argues that paying up front based on enrollment makes the system vulnerable to fraud. They've pointed to recent allegations in Minnesota as a reason to freeze subsidies and pull back the rule. But child care advocates and even some Republican state legislatures, like Missouri's, have argued that this change is essential for the economy. They say child care is the workforce behind the workforce. If these centers can't stay open because their funding is unpredictable, parents can't go to work. It's a classic clash between a focus on fraud prevention and a focus on industry sustainability.
Now, let's look at how state lawmakers are reacting to the escalating conflict abroad.
In Minnesota, there's a significant push by some lawmakers to pass a resolution calling for an end to President Trump's military strikes on Iran, specifically targeting what the administration calls Operation Epic Fury. While the resolution is largely symbolic and expected to fail along party lines, it represents a growing demand for the administration to justify the legal basis for these strikes. Lawmakers are increasingly concerned that the U.S. is sliding into a full-scale war without a clear plan or congressional approval.
It's interesting to see this play out at the state level. It shows how much the Operation Epic Fury strikes are weighing on the public consciousness. Even if the resolution doesn't stop the missiles, it forces a public record of where local representatives stand on the president's war-making powers. This tension between the executive branch and the legislature is only going to intensify as the conflict in the Middle East broadens.
Let's dive deeper into that North Carolina Senate race we mentioned earlier.
Roy Cooper and Michael Whatley are heading into what might be the most expensive Senate race of the cycle. Cooper is trying to walk a very fine line. He's a Democrat, but he's messaging himself as a moderate who will work with Trump when possible, but stand up to him when necessary. It's a strategy designed to peel off suburban Republicans and independents who might be tired of the constant political warfare. He's focusing heavily on affordability and kitchen table issues to avoid being painted as a DC insider.
On the other side, Michael Whatley is leaning directly into his ties with the Trump administration. As the former head of the RNC, he has the institutional backing of the Republican Party and a direct line to the MAGA base. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Cooper wins, it's a clear sign that a moderate, independent-minded Democrat can still succeed in the South. If Whatley wins, it confirms that North Carolina remains firmly in the Republican column, even with a popular former governor on the ballot. This race will be a bellwether for the entire country.
Now let's turn to South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and her recent testimony regarding Minnesota.
Governor Noem was in front of a Senate hearing recently defending immigration enforcement actions that took place in Minnesota. There have been allegations that federal agents may have acted illegally, and Hennepin County is actually opening an evidence portal to collect reports of misconduct. Noem, however, was steadfast. She argued that these enforcement actions are necessary for national security, and that state leaders who oppose them are putting citizens at risk. It was a heated exchange that highlighted the massive divide between red state governors and blue city officials over how immigration law should be handled.
And while that was happening, there was also a mention of Google being behind a new data center in Hermantown. It's a reminder that even amidst these high-level political battles, regional economic development is still moving forward. But the focus remains on Noem's rhetoric, which many see as a preview of her own potential national ambitions. She's positioning herself as a law and order leader who isn't afraid to take the fight into neighboring states.
Returning to Texas, we have more details on that chaotic primary night.
The night was defined by long delays and confusion at the polls, particularly in Dallas County. The local GOP changed the rules this year, requiring people to vote at their specific precinct instead of countywide centers. Hundreds of people showed up at the wrong places and were turned away. A judge tried to keep the polls open late, but the Texas Supreme Court stepped in to stop it. This was a huge deal because Jasmine Crockett, who lost to James Tallarico, is from Dallas. She alleged that her voters were being disenfranchised by the confusion.
Despite that, Tallarico's victory was decisive. He's a seminarian, and he really leans into his faith on the campaign trail, which is a bit unusual for a progressive Democrat. He's trying to reclaim the moral high ground from the GOP. On the Republican side, the Cornyn-Paxton runoff is going to be a bloodbath. They've already spent nearly $100 million, and we could see another $100 million before the May 26th runoff. It's a fight for the soul of the Texas GOP, and it shows that even a long-term incumbent like Cornyn isn't safe in this environment.
Next, we have a stern warning from a top Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York sat down with NPR after a classified briefing on the Iran strikes, and he was not happy. He said the administration simply does not have a plan. He asked about the plan to get Americans out safely and the plan for what happens after the strikes, and he says he got no clear answers. Meeks even went as far as to say that Trump wants to turn the Defense Department into a war department, suggesting the president is more interested in creating conflict than resolving it through diplomacy.
Meeks is also pushing for a war powers resolution. There are actually two versions being discussed, one that would require immediate congressional authorization for any further action, and another that would put a 30-day cap on military operations unless Congress approves. Meeks argues that the U.S. is not an authoritarian government and that the president must come to Congress to declare war. He's hoping to get enough Republican support to pass this. But it's a steep hill to climb. The administration's shifting justifications, from imminent threats to nuclear weapons, have left many in Congress skeptical of the official narrative.
In North Carolina, another primary race is showing a deep generational rift within the Democratic Party.
In the 4th District, incumbent Valerie Foushee is holding onto a razor-thin lead over her challenger, Nida Alam. Alam is 32, a Durham County Commissioner, and she's running well to the left of Foushee. She's calling for abolishing ICE and has been a vocal critic of the war in Gaza, even refusing donations from pro-Israel groups like AIPAC. Foushee, who is 69, represents the more traditional wing of the party. The race has seen over $4.4 million in outside spending, which is a record for this district.
This race is such a perfect example of the struggle for the Democratic identity. Is the party going to stick with the established, pragmatic leaders like Foushee, or is it going to move toward a younger, more confrontational generation represented by Alam? With 99% of the votes in, Foushee's lead is only about 1,000 votes. It could still go to a recount. It's a clear message to incumbents everywhere. Even in safe blue seats, you are being watched, and the base is hungry for change.
Finally, we look at a potential future for the Democratic Party beyond the current administration.
Pete Buttigieg was in New Hampshire recently, and he wasn't just there to talk about current policy. He was asking a very provocative question. What comes after Trump? He told an audience in Concord that Americans need to start picturing a day when Donald Trump no longer dominates the political landscape. His pitch was less about a constitutional collapse and more about managerial competence. He talked about the basics: food in the fridge, safe commutes, stable housing. He's positioning himself as the person who can fix what has been smashed to bits.
But critics are asking if that's enough. Simply returning to the pre-Trump normal might not address the regional economic decline and institutional distrust that brought Trump to power in the first place. Buttigieg's visit looked very much like a soft launch for a 2028 presidential run. He's trying to build a cross-partisan coalition focused on state capacity and solving concrete problems. Whether the managerial approach can win over a base that is currently very fired up and polarized is the big question for the next few years.
It's a lot to take in, from the chaos in the Middle East to the shifting sands of American politics. We'll be here every day to help you make sense of it all.
Thanks for joining us for this daily roundup. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss our next briefing. We'll see you tomorrow.